Okay, now what we're going to use is color effects, and we're going to come down here to the brilliance warmth filter. And so let's see if we can maximize our window here. And what we're going to do is we're going to kick this up to 75%. As you can see, adds some significant orange in here, but probably too much here because I don't really like what's happening to our buildings. And so, and we're leaving warmth set to 50. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to try to remove this from our buildings. So I'm going to come here again, pay attention to the loop. I'm going to come in and maybe click on that spot there and just come into a few of these places where I don't like what it's doing. And again, if I'm unhappy with it, I can always move it around. Pop that off of there. So like for example, this one here, I'm like, yeah, it might have taken a little bit too much out of the sky. I can come make sure that I'm doing some other part that's for certain part of the building. Okay. I'm going to go back to here. I think that's a good safe spot. And then if I want to make sure I add it back into the sky so the sky's still getting it, I can click on there. But you kind of get into this, battle royale between what gets it and what doesn't. Oops. Excuse me. I double clicked, which is zoomed in, which honestly, I did not know that. That's a new one for me. And so see, as I selected that area here, it excluded the building better and retained it in the sky. So I'm going to hold the Alt key. I'm going to just come in here and zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to come in here and see more of the image. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to add it over here. So I guess when that warmth back over there. And I'm going to do the same thing in the sky over here. So I'm sure to get that warmth back. So let's zoom out. And I may take a few more of these. And just kind of make sure that my nice orange areas are getting handled properly. And then take my little Smith tower on here and be sure to copy it over to any other areas that seem like they might be getting a little too orangey for me. Maybe this building here, maybe this part of the building there. Okay. Let's take a look at before and after. Before and after. Okay. And if we didn't like what was happening down here, see it again before and after, we could adjust it. But you know what? I didn't like how we kind of cooled that off too much before, so I'm going to leave some of that warmth in there. I like it a little bit better than what we had before. If we wanted to get some of the yellow off the road, we could certainly just put another negative viewpoint there, and any spillage is removed. It looks like, for the most part, that's what we had there before. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And so that's our brilliance and warmth feature. And then let's go in here and do a tonal contrast from color effects. Total contrast is totally cool. This is one that, but again, if you have noise like our little dust spots, it's going to make them stick out like a sore thumb, and any noise you didn't clean up nicely is going to just jump out at you. That's why, generally speaking, when you use tonal contrast, you want to just zero out things like your sky so that they remain nice and smooth. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of nasty noise in there that you really don't want. And then we want to make sure, though, that our buildings, like the Columbia Tower here, continue to get the detail. See how that all popped back up? So we're going to just kind of click on some of our buildings, make sure that they're getting all that sweet tonal contrast that we paid for here. I may put one right up there. Just kind of make sure all these guys aren't accidentally losing a little tonal contrast. Our buildings is where it counts. And then what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to show you a brush. Because we're going to use this effect, but we're not going to use it all. And now I'm going to go to my rock and pins, and so you notice by default everything's black. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint this in, and by default you're in paint mode, but I'll click it just to show you. And I'm going to move this guy over so it's out of my way, and I'm going to make myself, oops, excuse me, we're going to make ourselves a bigger brush, and just so you can see what I'm doing, we're going to zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to go and paint in that luscious detail. And the reason why we're kind of staying within, we don't want it to contaminate the sky, but we want to make sure that our buildings get it. So we're just going to kind of sloppily paint it in here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're doing a really big, large print, then yeah, it kind of does need to be perfect. So you'll use more exact masking techniques or rely more heavily on viewpoint controls. But for what we're doing here, this is plenty. And I'll come in here and see, I'll just apply it to my signs and add some detail to all this stuff. I can just kind of be real sloppy about it now and just paint it in. And you know, you may want to reduce it down to 50% or something like that for certain areas. I'm a huge fan of tonal contrast, so I just kind of get sloppy with it, paint it all in. Do a little smaller circle when I work in this area. And you know, the thing to remember about this is that I don't really like being in smoke, so you're limited to some things you can do. I can hit apply, and all brush does is it just creates a mask for you. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And the reason what I like to do with the mask is I like to press the Alt key and click on the eye. What that does is it just shows me just what part of the image is getting impacted, and it's important because it allows me to see where my gaps are. So, whoops, one bad thing. Whenever you switch out of brush mode, it selects the layer. You want to select the mask. So I did an undo, and then we're going to come in here, and we're going to fill in some of these chunks that we know got missed. And then how you handle the rest of it is up to you. I can come back in here knowing what I've done. So let's turn all these. I actually just really need the last layer. Here's a performance tip. If you unselect those layers, since they're not visible anyway, on Photoshop, I've been told uses less memory. I'm not sure if that's a fact or not, but that's what I've been told. So I'm going to come in here with my white brush, paint my signs in, paint my little signs in the background, make sure they're all nice and sharp. not going to worry about this railing because I'm going to delete it later anyway. I think when I alt-click this, yeah, it's kind of missing some of this building here, so that helps me to see what I've missed. This whole building here, I'm going to just kind of grab the edges of it because I want some of that detail on top to show really well. And this is just kind of a selective sharpening technique. And I'm just going to go along the edges a little bit here. And again, the smaller your image, the more sloppy you can be because it won't make a difference. If you're going to do a big giant, as I did with one of my saddle prints where I did a big 54 inch wide print, then you've got to really be careful with all of your masking, otherwise it will haunt you badly when you print your image large because all your places you missed will stick out like a sore thumb. So let's see, here's some areas we missed. I'm just going to kind of come in here and say, oops, I got some sky, so I'll just deselect that sky. Bring in some more buildings. Here's a trick that I sometimes do as well. Let's go ahead and give it a quick try and see if it'll work. Let's double click to fill that in. I'll come in here with the quick select tool, and then I'll try to just see if I can, oops, yeah, it's acting a little slow on me. If I can get just the sky. No, sometimes when you have these clouds and stuff, it's not very handy. If I have a cleaner sky, it'll usually pick it up really good. I can tweak my settings to quick mask, but sometimes I'll just come in there and do a quick mask and invert and then take care of all this stuff. That didn't work, so we'll just kind of keep doing what we were doing there, as it's probably the fastest way. So now that I see what I've got here, I'm going to come in my bold black and get rid of all that shouldn't be. Because what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to keep it total contrast out of the sky. It's really bad in the sky because it just creates ugly noise, but it's great on these nice textured buildings. And how low you go is kind of up to you. I come in here a little bit, take some of that out. Some people may say, you know what, I want to just do all that. Okay, just create a big brush and voila. And you got all that stuff done. Oops. Oops, let's exclude that in there. Include that area. And I'll take in a little more of this building. A little more of that building. And I might get a little sloppy here for a second and then come back clean up. So what I'll do is make a smaller brush. And it's just grunt work at this point. How good depends on how much time and patience you have. That's really what separates the good from the great, is how much time you spend on these little fine details to make your image look the best it could possibly look. My shortcoming is that I don't have that much patience, so my masks are a little bit on the sloppy side. But the reality is, if this is never going to be bigger than a 4x6 print or 8x10 print, and you're going to be showing it on the web most of the time. It doesn't need to be perfect. Nobody's ever going to see the detail. So, if we take a look now at our before, after, before, after, quite a big difference. Again, I'd probably not do that one so red. And one of the things I did on my image of this one is I wanted to be a little different in the background. So I came into the bicolor filters, I think it was, and I just chose purple. And how you do that just kind of depends on what you want to accomplish. So for my vertical shift, I can bring that down, or excuse me, up or down. And how much I do kind of depends on the effect that I want. I can use my U-point controls again and get rid of it on some areas and experiment. I can come in here, say OK. Okay, now that we have that in there, we may decide that there's too much color down here in the city part. So what we can do is we already did a lot of exclusion of the city with our tonal contrast. So if we do, I believe it's Command click, and if we come in here, select this layer, create a new mask, that gives us a duplicate mask. And then now if we invert that using Command I, you can see that we kind of get the effect that we want. Now there's some areas in here that you kind of have to clean up from the mask based on what we were doing in the previous one. So if I come in here and just, oops, just deselect that, kind of got to clean up these edges a little bit better. You kind of get the idea. And again, this is going to be as good as much time you want to spend into it. And this whole bicolor filter thing, this is sort of an extra step that I threw in. I may want to exclude all this, and if my web picture is going to be this big, you don't see the flaws. So I'm going to be looking at a big giant print this big, then you're going to see a lot more issues with this image, like all these areas in here. So a lot of it just depends on your actual target size, and so you can spend hours tweaking your photo for whatever your target destination is. And again, because I was sloppy with my tonal contrast, sometimes you'll see some little artifacts here when you apply another big filter on there like that. So that's something to keep in mind is, what are you going to be doing after you make your edits? So there's always lessons learned. You got to pay attention to the details. And if this is my last step, then I can be sloppy with that stuff, and I'm not going to notice it. There's a little bit if I want to clean up a little bit around the edges and stuff, but for the most part, if this is how I'm going to display the image at size this big, then I'm fine. If I'm going to display it, like I said, in a really large print, then all these edges need to be cleaned up perfect. Using tools like the quick mask or the magnetic lasso tool, are your keys to getting around these edges and getting it all nice and perfect for you. So that concludes our video. Thank you for joining me. Bye.